All right, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Big Dave here on a Bizarre Cast. I know I got a bunch of different podcasts going on all over the place. We got Culture Dads. I'm bringing back Dave Martell live. We got the Bizarre Cast. I was doing Pulp Talk. I don't even know what I'm doing. I just got all this stuff going on, but we're gonna bring it all here to not just the Dave Martell YouTube channel, but we're gonna be putting it over on Odyssey. We're gonna be doing a lot of live restreaming, all kind. I got a lot of big plans for the rest of the summer going into this year. So Big Dave is coming back full force, full power. I can't wait. But if you like what we're doing here, make sure you subscribe, share, do all that good stuff. Follow me on Twitter and Telegram at the Bizarre Archives. You can also check me out on Telegram, just me, at the Bog Lord. But without further ado, I have an awesome guest here tonight. You know, when I started the Bizarre Archives a year ago, right? We started the Bizarre Archives a year ago. We've had some ups and downs, right? It's been a little bit of learning curve. We've had some growing pains, but overall, we've just done awesome. Like, it's just been so much fun. We've been kicking ass, selling books. People are getting involved. It's been so much fun. And since I started the Bizarre Archives project, I have had the pleasure of rubbing elbows with some really, really cool people that have helped me out and have been just awesome allies, awesome friends. And one of them is the OG of the pulp revolution itself. Like, a lot of you guys out there that are listening to this know that the Bizarre Archives came out, and then, you know, that was kind of like your introduction into pulp fiction, into like based new pulp fiction. Well, the truth is that kind of the based underground pulp scene has been going on for a little while before, for quite a few years. And there was a group of guys that started it, and one of the OGs of what is called the pulp revolution. One of the founders is with me this evening, Mr. P. Alexander, a guy who's been a great ally to me, founder of Cirsova magazine, awesome writer, visionary, just an awesome guy. How we doing, sir?
Wow, thanks for that introduction, Dave. That was that's really something. I'm doing all right. Glad to be here.
Yes, sir. So just tell us, how'd you get into pulp? You know, how'd you get in the mix? And, you know, we're gonna specify, because I know you've said this before. Cirsova isn't a pure. It's in the pulp. It's like pulp adjacent. It's like you're like one of the boys. You're like part of the pulp gang. Like, you go to the pulp parties. But to be fair, Cirsova is a science fiction magazine. And I know that you've specified this before, but doesn't matter. That's splitting hairs. How'd you get into pulp? How'd you get into fiction? How'd you start Cirsova? Tell us. Just give us the scoop.
All right. Well, the real story goes all the way back to the late aughts. I used to have a punk rock and industrial label. Our webpage had some advertisements on it that we were doing through Project Wonderful. And one of the people who got some ads on our record label's website was a guy named James Hutchings. You might know him from Cirsova as doing the long form poem adaptation of My Name is John Carter, but he's also a game developer for both tabletop and video games. And so
Really?
on my punk rock industrial labels website, you know, there's this link to this thing called Age of Fables, and it's this really kick-ass, very detailed, in-depth browser-based RPG. And like, I become addicted to this thing. I'm playing it all the time, and I'm like, I want to find out more about this. Well, I find out that the guy has a blog. He's involved in the gaming community, something called the OSR. And, you know, his stuff kind of inspired me to dust off some Dungeons and Dragons stuff that I was working on for a setting that was called Cirsova, you know. So I started the blog out as a way to just, you know, dump some of the ideas that I had for this Dungeons and Dragons setting. Eventually, I became less interested in the setting itself and more in the mechanics. But, you know, I started meeting and talking to these people in the game blog sphere. And, you know, one of them was Jeffro Johnson, who I'm sure everybody who's listening has heard of. And if you haven't, you got to check him out and the work he did on Appendix N. But anyway, fast forward a few years to about 2014, 2015, Jeffro has been hitting the Appendix N stuff hard. He's looking at the pulps, he's looking at the literary origins of Dungeons and Dragons, and he's kind of inspired me to do some of the same thing. And I'm starting to hit the flea markets. I'm finding this treasure trove of old Planet Story magazines at flea markets going cheap, and like I'm buying all of them that I can get my hands on, because like it between $4 to $20 a pop for pulp from the 40s, that's a hell of a good deal. There's a lot of good fiction in there, so I mean, I'm reviewing some of that stuff. Jeffro's reviewing the stuff he's reviewing, and there's the whole Hugo's thing with the sad puppies. And honestly, I was really disappointed with a lot of the short fiction that the sad puppies came out with. I'm like, this isn't the cool, awesome stuff that you guys promised. I'm thinking, oh man, everybody's saying that these guys are like all super regressive and right wing and stuff. I'm expecting like guys with ray guns fighting spear chucking alien natives, but nah, it's not that much different from the stuff that they're complaining about. So I'm like, I could probably do better. I could, where can I find this fiction? What can I do to get my hands on more of the stuff I'm enjoying?
Yeah.
And so, I kind of start getting the idea, maybe I'll put a magazine together. And, here's another one of the pieces of deepest lore that was, kind of a secret till just a few years ago when I let the cat out of the bag, was that the other side of Cirsova's starting was, I came up with this troll review of a fake pulp story that didn't exist to see like what Jeffro Johnson thought about it. And he's like, wow, that sounds awesome. And I'm like, yeah, I just made that up. I should actually, write it. And so I did, instead of submitting it to other magazines, I'm like, all right, I'll make my own magazine and pay other people to be in it. And, that's how the first Cirsova issue got started. From there on, we just started getting bigger and bigger, more people interested, sending in submissions, and it's just kind of been snowballing with the interest.
Very, very cool. And your first issue, how did you what was the reception like? Because I know, when did you put out the first issue? It was like 2016, 2015?
Yeah, first issue was spring 2016.
And what was the reception like?
A lot of people were really impressed, I mean, and it was our first offering, but we managed to make it look cool and professional. We got some really good authors. We got some really good stories. We got stuff from Sky Hernstrom, Misha Burnett, Donald Eichflute, a few others who not all of them have gone on to become regulars with us, but those are a few of the really big name highlights that were in that first issue. And, the stories were great, but I got to say that the magazine has gotten better since then, because now I've got a team of people helping me with the copy editing. So, we have less typos and stuff like that. And so we've ended up with a really professional look now.
Yeah. How many issues do you think it took for you guys to kind of like work into? Because I know, how many issues you guys have out now?
We are about to put out our 25th issue.
Yeah, so you guys have a pretty good head start on we're about to do issue 3, and I feel like now, I think issue 3 is going to be our first one. It's like starting to look good, and not that I think that our first issue is bad. I'm proud of it, and it did very well. But I feel that we got a few issues until we really hit our stride. Do you feel like you had that same thing?
We were in a kind of an interesting situation where, the first issue was one submission period, so we did like one submission call. We got the bunch of good stuff. We published a bunch of good stuff, but we didn't get a whole lot of stuff. We got maybe 20, 30 stories, I think, and published about 10 of them. The second time around, we hit up all the sites that have announcements. Like, we got listed on Submission Grinder, we got listed on Duotrope, we got listed on Raylan, and we just got a flood of really good submissions for our second submission period. I'm originally thinking, all right, I'm just going to take like submission and do it one issue at a time.
Yeah.
But we got so many good stories that we got 3 issues out of it, including a double-sized issue.
Wow.
And like our very second issue, like Morgan Holmes, who writes over at Castalia House. I don't know if you know him that well, but he's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon with classic sword and sorcery writers from like the 70s and stuff. And I was talking to him about some paperback books that I found over at the flea market. I'm like, yeah, this is really good. I kind of bought it because like it looked cheesy and stuff, and like the marketing copy was absurdly dumb. It was like fantasy in the vein, or science fiction in the vein of Lovecraft, and fantasy in the vein of Tolkien, when it's like a barbarian dude fighting this dragon thing. And like I'm like, this is gonna be silly, but I read it and it's really freaking good. And it's by this guy who you may have heard of, Adrian Cole. And like Morgan Holmes is like, I can put you in touch with him if you want to talk with him about some stuff. And so, I actually reached out to him about what he thought about the ad copy and, his story in the Dream Lords. And, what ended up happening was we got to talking, and he's actually resurrected that series. Like, so he's got a new volume out now that collects the new Dream Lord stories that he published with Cirsova that are a sequel to those books that he wrote in the 70s. Mm-hmm. And so like we had that in our second issue. So that was kind of like a cool shot in the arm of like, oh, hey, Cirsova's doing some really big stuff,
That's awesome. And what was, you mentioned you pulled out some of the old pulps and the old pulp magazines, and some of these gave you your inspiration. Is there any specific titles that or publications that you could bring up and say like these were the ones that really inspired our flavor?
Yeah. The one that's absolutely the strongest influence on us is Planet Stories. Mm-hmm. Like we even went out of our way to get our interior typeface to match as closely as we could what Planet Stories used for theirs. And so like even though we've kind of moved away from being strictly science fiction or strictly fantasy, that magazine is really one of the touchstones of the kind of fiction that I usually look for. Just in terms of storytelling, pacing, just exciting adventure and cool settings with weird stuff going on, So I mean, there are some other pulp mags that I do enjoy. Like I like Thrilling Wonder Stories. I enjoy some Startling. I like some of the Weird Tales stuff, but for me, Planet Stories is where it's at.
Very cool. I love there are so many. I started collecting the reprints of these because like now that it's starting to get popular again, like there's a lot of collectors out there. So if you want your hands on like a real authentic original pulp, a lot of times you're paying big money. But
and that's another one of the reasons why Planet Stories is a really good place to start, is that the range on those is from about $4 to maybe $60, and you're gonna pay like $60 if it's got Lee Brackett as the cover story, or Ray Bradbury as the cover story, or Powell Anderson as the cover story. But like generally you're going to be able to get those for a lot more affordable than contemporary Weird Tales, or like if you go back like 10, 20 years to Argosy or All Story Weekly, those things are through the roof, and you're not even going to get complete stories anyway. You're going to have to get like 6 issues of like a $200 to $600 pulp zine to get a whole novel if you're trying to get those.
Yeah. I also, because I have a few copies of Cirsova, and one thing that I like about Cirsova, number one, you do like the full magazine format. And also you have a lot of stuff in there that it was a little bit kind of reminiscent of like some 80s era mags and stuff like I kind of get some feel of Analog. I get some feel. I don't know if you've ever read that one.
I have not read any of the 80s era Analog, but the Campbell era Analog and Astounding that I've read is like just dog trash that was so bad that like it almost oh man, Campbell's stuff, like his stuff is, the stuff he picked is so bad. This like, no wonder everybody likes the big 3. They were the only guys who were being published in his magazine that were any good.
And what about here's some stuff that really influenced me. Now obviously the Bizarre Archives as far as its design and format doesn't look. By the way, shout out to everybody. Bjarke, John Della Rose, what's up? Fiona
Yeah,
Wolf.
JD just gave a shout out for Tremaine. I do have a Tremaine era issue of Astounding, and that's freaking fantastic. It's the one where they go into the termite mound and like fight termites with like little pin needles.
That's awesome. Awesome.
That's good era Astounding.
So what about here's an era of stuff that I was really into that really influenced me. You ever get into like the heavy metal magazines, or maybe there's a bunch that were out around that time. What about like Perry Rodin and stuff like that?
You know, honestly, that stuff is kind of outside my wheelhouse because I mean, I'm a little bit young for some of the pulp crowd. I mean, I'm Gen Y, so I'm kind of influenced by like the tail end of the Gen X stuff, but I didn't really get into a lot of the magazines and that stuff. So like, you know, originally the fantasy background I'm coming from is crap like Dragonlance, you know.
Yeah.
You know, because you know, it's what was being published at the time. It was on the shelf, and you didn't know better. You didn't know that there was better fantasy stuff out there.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I'm 35. I just turned 35, by the way. But I'm 35. Fortunately, I had an older brother who was, you know, a Gen Xer guy, so I got to see some of the really cool older stuff. And you know, I got during that time period, I got my hands on some Ace paperbacks and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I came from that school as well. My introduction to fantasy was when I was a little kid. Obviously, I got into The Hobbit and Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe and stuff like that. And when I got a little bit older, I got into like the horror comics. That was like kind of my like Tales from the Crypt, creepy, eerie. Like that was like my introduction into this kind of stuff. But Dragonland, like Dungeons, the stuff that's adjacent to Dungeons and Dragons was probably my biggest dive into it, right? You got the Dragonlance, Dragons of Autumn's Twilight, you got the Icewind Dale saga, you got like all that kind of stuff. Looking back, I actually don't really like those things. I don't really revisit those settings very much. Do you like going back and checking them out?
You know, one time I did actually go back as an adult and revisited the first two trilogies of Dragonlance. And, you know, I'm like, you know, these aren't that bad. You know, they're not amazing. They're not super groundbreaking, but they were enjoyable to go back and reread. And, you know, at one point, like this is going to be blasphemy for a lot of people. But at one point, you know, I took my whole Dragonlance set. I took it down to the local bookstore. I traded it in for the 6-volume Ace or whatever it was edition of the Elric books.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, like the first one was good, but oh my God, all the middle books just dragged forever. Like that is definitely one of those series that like you've got to read it in publication order, not chronological order. Cause like, the middle just like hangs like a weight and I hated it. And I never even managed to finish it.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on with me these days now that I'm older. I tried to crack open Dragons of Autumn's Twilight. I love that. I read it when I was like 13 or 14 or something like that. And I loved it, right? I fell in love with it. And I read the Icewind Dale saga. And I was like really big into this. I couldn't even get like to chapter 5 with Dragonlance. I was like, this is so boring. Oh my God. I can't sit through the epic fantasy stuff anymore. Like, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just I'm getting old. And also, I do think that my brain is getting rewired because I've read so many of these damn short stories over the last year. So it's like I'm like wired for short form. But I don't know. Is that something that you're experiencing too? You're beginning to appreciate shorter form, or what's up?
Yeah, and not only that, like since I read so much fiction for work, I find like it's more relaxing for me these days just to read nonfiction stuff. So like what I've been trying to do is like I'm trying to keep reading the fiction that's non-work related so I can make headway on that stack. So I'll be reading like one fiction book, one nonfiction book, and you know, I'll try to like squeeze some comics in on the side, you know. So I don't get too burned out on any one thing, but I'm not like getting stuck or feeling like, oh man, it's such a chore having to read fiction because I know I'm going to have to read like 300 stories here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's also anybody listening that's feeling that kind of way that wants to check out nonfiction. My boy Mike my co-host on Culture Dads, his company, Imperium Press, they put out some excellent books, man. I highly suggest Ancient City. Ancient City's a great one. Yeah, I have it right next to me. I have Folk Tales in the Indo-European Tradition. Really great stuff. So go check them out. A lot of good stuff over there. So as far as Cirsova, and I know that you've been around for quite a while, and here's something that maybe you might know about. Do you have any experience going to like cons or getting involved with like the mainstream industry or anything like that?
I haven't done any like science fiction cons or anything like that that's really literary focused. We've got a couple of local comic conventions and anime conventions, and I go to those, and I actually did pretty well at the last local Little Rock comic convention. But nah, I haven't really put much effort into doing the whole one where it's like all authors with little booths and tables, because I doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah. I think there was a pretty big. I went to Philadelphia Comic Con in like what was it 2008, I believe it was. It was pretty, I mean, it was expensive, but there was some pretty cool stuff there. It was like there was a lot of folks with booths that had their own tabletop games they were working on. There was a lot of like artists and guys promoting their comics and authors, and it wasn't really that weird or anything. I've not gone to one since then. However, I do have friends that go, and seeing the pictures of the type of people that go to these things now is like we were planning on going to the Necronomicon up in Providence, Rhode Island, because Lovecraft is our thing and all that. So we were going to go up to that thing. And I'm telling you, the pictures of the people that go to these things is just bizarre. Freaks, absolute mutants. Have you gone to it and seen have you noticed like a change when it used to be kind of like, all right, there's some like nerdy guys, some regular guys, and just everybody here that's pretty normal. We just like fantasy and horror and sci-fi stuff. And then there's like a few years where it shifted, and now there's just these sideshow creature, these like despicable like mutants, like they're like the citizens of Necromunda from Warhammer 40K that go to these things. But have you noticed like there was like a few years in maybe 2010 or to 12 that the kind of like fan bases and audiences for these art forms changed into mutants?
See, I didn't know because like 2010 through 2012, I was playing in an incredibly offensive punk band and not involved in science fiction.
Tell me about your punk band.
I played bass in a band called the Kill Crazies. We played just really low down, dirty, offensive horror punk.
Based.
We were the kind of band where we got rushed on stage by fans of a band called the Throbbing Testicles because we were too offensive.
Well, okay. Well, how offensive are we talking?
Pretty offensive.
So that kind of like that's so based though. That's so like you've had like multiple art form. You're a musician too?
Yeah. I played bass in a punk band. I also played bass and keyboards in an industrial band where I was more of a creative driver on the industrial side than on the punk side. In fact, the industrial band, it was before I was really getting into the sci-fi fantasy publishing thing, but I was kind of dipping my toes in it because industrial is a musical art form that it goes really well with whole sci-fi dystopian mystic thing. And so one of the albums that we did was this concept album of it was the soundtrack for a non-existent science fiction movie that was kind of a dark, almost Stanislaw Lem type story, where this expedition to research the supermassive black hole at the center of the Milky Way gets lost in a time warp and everybody goes insane. And so that the album is basically the soundtrack for the movie with that concept.
That's cool. That's a really cool idea. Very creative. What kind of tunes are you still playing music?
I haven't really been doing music in a while. You know, it's not easy around here to find people who are
Yeah, I feel
both
that.
interested in the kind of stuff I want to do and dedicated enough to really make it happen.
Yeah, that's why I stopped playing music. It's like
Yeah, because I mean, like when I say industrial, like I'm not talking about like Nine Inch Nails or Skinny Puppy or something like that. I'm talking like old school throbbing gristle, like really discordant, disharmonious stuff with a touch of drone metal type stuff thrown in along the lines of Sun or Boris, stuff like that.
that's interesting. Yeah, that
Stuff that's
now.
not gonna build up, like a really big fan base in a small town like Little Rock.
Yeah, that stuff's kind of out of. I am familiar with Skinny Puppy and stuff like that, but a lot of that's kind of out of my wheelhouse. I'm a metal guy, so I actually that's the whole reason I got out of playing music. It's just there's just too many guys that just aren't dedicated. Yeah, I got 3 kids. I didn't have 3 kids back then, but I had kid. I had a kid.
Yeah,
Right. I
I
was a
see.
dad. Go ahead.
I see John in the chat there, like, all I was goth before it was cool. It's funny he mentions that because one of the most influential albums on me musically is probably Nico's Desert Shore, which is like the grandmother of all goth albums.
What kind of music do you jam to when you're like getting inspired?
Right now, I'm kind of listening to a whole bunch of different things, but like right now I've been on a big neo folk kick. I really love Rome.
There you go.
I I love any sort of like drone doom metal stuff like Towards Darkness, Boris. Um, I do like some black metal. I like Zasthur. I like Burzum. Even though Varg's kind of a fedora tipping dick, I still like Burzum.
I had actually on this channel, I had a beef with Varg. Me and Varg don't like each other. So
It's funny. Like me and Varg used to like talk about like Elder Scrolls, like Morrowind and shit, like back on WordPress. But I don't know. He just like got too fedora tippy over on Twitter, and then he's like, you know what, man, I'm done. You're being too much of a dick. So
yeah. But you mentioned
yes,
Doom.
Sun. He mentioned Sun there in the chat. I love Sun.
Oh yeah, and also Dark Throne. That's something that might be up your alley.
Yeah, Dark Throne's all right. I don't have anything from him, but like Zasthur, Streborg, trying to think of some other black metal bands like I really dig on.
You're gonna hate my black metal opinions. I like Immortal. I like Dissection's first album, and that's like about it. Like I don't really get it. I like the thrust of black metal. Like I like the aesthetic. I appreciate it. But I'm an East Coast guy. I grew up liking thrash. I like some death metal. Doom. We can talk some Doom. I love. I'm a big fan of Candlemass. So, but it's just a little bit far away.
Cough, Evoken, even some Typo Negative.
That now you're getting into the gothy stuff. Yeah. I had a girlfriend that was obsessed with Typo Negative. Everybody's had a girlfriend that was obsessed with Typo Negative.
Oh man, I wish.
Fingal, yeah. Storm of Light's Bane. Hell yeah, absolutely. That's it. That's the album. Yeah. Bathory. I like a lot of that stuff. When I hear black metal, though, what comes to my mind, the first black metal I got introduced to was stuff like Venom and Celtic Frost and like stuff like that. You know what I mean? I love your guy.
Yeah, I mean, I may be a heretic for saying this, but when I saw Typo with Celtic Frost and Brand New Sin, I like Brand New Sin better than Celtic Frost.
Really?
Well, I mean, I got a soft spot for like Southern hard rock, and like they were, even though they were like Northerners, like singing about Wyoming and shit, it was good Southern rock.
Yeah. Yeah, I get into some. Like I like Marshall Tucker Band and
Blood Rock.
Yeah, some of that stuff's pretty good. So let's music is. We could be here talking all day about music. talking about music. But so what going back to Cirsova, what is because I know you have some other stuff that you're working on, and you finally you had like what was it called? You have like a Kickstarter thing going on, and you
Yeah,
just came out with Wild
we
Stars, right?
yeah, we just wrapped up a Kickstarter a couple months ago for Michael Tierney's Wild Stars, which is a really gonzo science fiction ray gun adventure
Mhm.
series that he's been working on since the 70s. And we
Wow.
are probably going to be able to ship that out to everybody who pre-ordered it here in the coming weeks. And once we do that, we'll be able to get it up on Amazon for sale.
Yes, speaking of Kickstarter, John Della Rose is in the chat. He's had a lot of success with this kind of format of marketing, I guess you could say, where you do the Kickstarter and then you get it all hooked up, and then you just send your packages out to all the supporters. Have you guys had a lot of success with this kind of approach?
Yeah, we've done pretty well with it, and it's really good for us because it gives us a decent cash infusion. Because you get your Kickstarter money like 2 weeks after it ends, as opposed to if you sell something online and you see the money like in 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the reasons why we're hitting really hard on the current Kickstarter we're running. That's got like I think 1 maybe 2 days left to collect the second volume of Mongoose and Meerkat. Which is Cirsova's flagship sword and sorcery duo that we've been serializing since about 2017. So the concept that Jim likes to pitch with them is like, imagine if Fafford and the Grey Mouser weren't, kind of disgusting new age degenerate stuff. If you like that kind of sword and sorcery, but you don't necessarily want like, oh, this character is a weird, gross rapist, and this character like beats on women, like this gives you your sword and sorcery picaresque adventure fix without like delving into kind of squick stuff.
Yeah. And speaking of that, you recently got knocked off of Twitter, right? you got temporary banned, right?
Oh yeah, the eternally butt mad and the pibs.
Yeah, you're like you called a guy he called a sodomite the F word. I don't even know if I could say it on YouTube anymore.
Yeah, I don't think we were supposed to talk about this.
But yeah, well, he is.
Are you monetized? You won't be
they,
soon.
no, they took away my monetization ages ago. Yeah, so they could.
Yeah, no, but anyway, like we were talking about the submission guidelines of like all these new fake pulp magazines that like almost every one of them that you see come out like always like has to like crap on the pulps all the time, be like, oh yeah, we love the pulps, we want stuff like that, except for how bigoted and racist and sexist they all were. It's like just admit that you hate the pulps and you don't want stuff like that was in the pulps, like and for all the complaints, these people haven't actually read these things. Like over half the Tarzan stories I've read ends with like, and then Tarzan's friends, 100 black people with guns, showed up and saved the day.
It's terrible. I'll tell you what, when I first started coming into this, like I was like, there's, I didn't know anybody was working on the pulps. I thought it was like this dead thing. So I started to check out some of the pulps that were going, and I found a Facebook group. It was called something like New Pulp Writers United, or it was like something like that. And JD Cohen, shout out JD Cohen, by the way. He says all those magazines always blow. He's right. They always do fucking blow.
Yeah, anything that says new pulp, like capital N new, is going to be trash.
Yeah, terrible. But when I was first looking at this stuff, I go into these Facebook groups, always like these like fat pigs with the box frame glasses and the purple hair and like all this, the usual suspects of spiteful mutants, right? And I look at they're posting it. They're posting like not it's not Substack, whatever the other one was. That's the one that they like to use. But anyway, I go and I read some of these stories that they're posting. One of them, I can't remember what it was called. It was about the worst. It was like the biggest heaving piece of crap I ever seen in my life. First of all, there was like a third of the story was this really graphic, disgusting sex scene. It was like really nasty. And it was like there was this like the feminist sword and sorcery, and of course the villain was this cruel, white dude that had all this money and power. It was just like, it was so dumb. It was like the worst thing that I've ever seen. And it was just like so many stories like this. And I'll tell you what, I think this stuff's like really boosted because I go and they share their Twitters. I go on their Twitters of some of these like pause authors. They have like, 10, 12, 15, 20,000 follows, and they have like nobody's fucking with their stuff. Like there's like,
No,
2-3 likes. I go on Amazon, there's like 3 reviews. It's an average 3 stars. I had a guy send a submission to us, and he sent this submission to us, and he later pulled it back because, like you do, I don't keep my mouth shut enough on social media. He found some of my posts and some of the people some of the big evil horrible people that I'm involved with, right? And he's like, I'm gonna take this back. And I was like, why are you taking it back? What do you mean? You can't do that. You can't submit something and whatever. And we had this big argument or what. I was like, fine, you know what? Whatever. Get out of here. And I go look at him. He's he was like editor-in-chief of this one project that was supposed to be, it was like called like socially conscious pulp fiction.
Oh Jesus.
It was terrible. It was terrible.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Five reviews.
But like, here's one of the things that always gets me, like there was this one magazine that was kind of around a few years ago, and we tried to help signal boost them and tried to help them and stuff, but they just kept tripping over their own feet, and they post stuff like, why aren't we getting more submissions from women? Why aren't we getting more diverse submissions? And I'm like, I don't know, because I don't ask for diverse submissions. I don't have any of that crap in my submissions guidelines. I get incredibly diverse submissions. We have stories from men and women all over the world. This spring we had 2 stories from Romania. Next year we've already got a story lined up from somebody in Japan. We've had people from South America. We've had people from South Africa. We've had people from India, Greece, UK, all over the damn world. And the only thing we ask for is send us good stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, Bizarre Archives, we've had one female submission so far, and it's not like we're like blocked. We're not like saying no girls allowed or nothing like that. We've just only had, I lied, we had 2. We've had 2 so far. One of them was published in issue 1, and the other one got rejected. But for some reason, we don't get a lot of female. They're just not really interested in.
Yeah, well, I mean, the interesting thing might just be the fact that we've got such a nonsense name that you can't pin down. Like, people don't really come into us with any existing preconceived notions of what kind of stories we really want beyond what's in our guidelines, because I mean, like, people think, Bizarre Archives, they probably think, oh, it's going to be Lovecraft, it's going to be weird stuff. That's not necessarily for me. Whereas, with Cirsova, there's not any real assumptions that you might take away from that name, and one of the reasons why we changed our subtitle from Magazine of Science Fiction or Heroic Fantasy and Science Fiction to Thrilling Adventures and Daring Suspense was to try to broaden that base even more. So, I mean, we've got we end up with just so many different types of things and submissions that we're really able to cover a pretty significant breadth of the pulps without anything being too far outside of our wheelhouse.
Yeah. So, I do know that you guys adhere to the superversive kind of idea that some folks really enjoy.
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, we are not like superversive TM, and I've had some disagreements early on when I was just sort of coming up with my own guidelines and ideas of what the pulp rev is versus what superversive is, where there's overlap, where there's differences. But I mean, I talk and hang with those guys because they're good guys. And so some of the stuff that we publish might be considered superversive. Some of it might not necessarily be. Sometimes we go out of our way to find things that, have those good, wholesome, happy endings. Cause it's it's a satisfying way for the stories to end, you know. And in fact, one of the longer new Dreamlord stories that we published by Adrian Cole, like our only real suggestion was we didn't want the girl to die at the end. We wanted the main character's sidekick to have the girlfriend at the end. So like, because I mean, so many times, like, you know, the story ends like, oh, it's a bummer, the girl's dead, boo hoo hoo, you know. But you know, you get that hero getting the girl. That's what people want to see. That's what people need these days, I think.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate the idea and the thrust behind Superversive. I like that it pushes back on. I think what they're reacting against is kind of the postmodern deconstructive narrative. This idea that heroes should be these like uncaring, nihilist, mushy, like douchebags, and instead they want to create heroes that are strong and handsome and courageous and righteous and stuff like. And that's, you know, I agree with that. I the postmodern nihilism and the irony and the garbage, that's of course, you know, terrible. But I do think that unfortunately, I have a disagreement with reactionism. Period. Because I think that reactionism traps you in a dialectic that is still kind of beholden to what you're trying to oppose. It's like,
yeah, which is why I don't consider myself or Cirsova to be superversive just because of those limitations. You know, I want to be able to go beyond just the superversive ideals in case I come across something like, you know, like this is kind of dark, but I really like it.
Yeah. So it's like, it could be, so like in the way that it gets described sometimes, you could put Conan in the subversive category, because Conan is not like an apple pie, flat top, goody two shoes. Conan is cruel sometimes. He's selfish sometimes. He avoids conflict sometimes. Sometimes he reluctantly gets thrusted into it. You know, sometimes he's lustful, right? Because Conan is the son of Beowulf. He's the son of Odysseus. He's the son of these like primordial heroes, these like ubermensch heroes that were like kind of like in a station of birth above normal people, right? They were kind of like the Nietzschean overman. So they don't adhere to the same morality and laws that regular people do. So so it's like you could, within that dichotomy, you could put Conan in the subversive category. And it's like, for me, if anybody told me Conan was subversive, I tell them, you know, get out of here, take a hike with that. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, you have to sort of consider that, you know, Conan is a mythic figure. You know, Howard was trying to write sort of a mythic adventure figure, and really he came out of his earlier attempts at writing a Shakespearean high tragic figure through Kull. I mean, like if you read something like Kull, like we're talking like a character who's like King Lear, but you know, fighting Snake Man. Like there's some really, really strong, deep themes running throughout Kull, but the editors are like, we got to have a little bit more adventure, a little bit more swashbuckling. Like you're going a little bit too dark here, Howard. And so that's where Conan came from.
So Decal's Library asks, he said, I've never read Cirsova. Should I start with the best issue and disappoint myself with the rest? Or should I start with the weakest issue and work my way up? Who says that there's a weak issue?
I tell you what, if you haven't read any of our issues, a good place to start would be either the spring issue of any year or the fall issue, or not the fall, but the winter issue from 2016. The winter issue from 2016 was our double length issue where, you know, I really got a chance to kind of explore the breadth of the types of stories that I wanted to include in Cirsova. Whereas generally with the spring issues, if we're doing any sort of long serialization thing, that's where we've been putting the first part of it, just because of how our submissions windows go. Like, so if you wanted to get started on something, I'd say like pick up the spring issue from this year where we start serializing the new Wild Stars novel.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I got a spammer in here. Hold up one second. I'll take care of him.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had to say that there was any one weakest issue, it would probably be our first one, just because, you know, I was still trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
But even though it's one of our weakest issues in that regard, it still has some great stories. Like I said, it's got Misha Burnett, it's got Skylar Hernstrom, it's got Don Eitflute, it's got people who have become pretty well known within the scene today in that first issue.
Yeah. I have from DMR, I have Skylar's, was it the Eye of Sonu or something like that? I can't pronounce it.
Yeah. And that one collects a bunch of his early Cirsova stories.
Yep. I really enjoyed that. I thought there was some really cool stuff in there. I like his flavor. I think a lot of guys try too hard to be like a Howard knockoff, and he's certainly Howardian, but he's got his own thing going on. So I really like him.
He also has a decent mixing of Vance in there too, I think, and that helps leaven it out. Because I mean, Sky's a guy who you know he's lived a pretty exciting life himself, so you know that transfers over into his writings. So
what would you say? You know, speaking of living an exciting life, one of the things that I advise people a lot of times ask me, you know, how do I get into writing more, coming up with more ideas and doing this? I'm like, go live life, experience life. Go, you know, first of all, like go to the gym, go out camping, go hunting, go have adventures, you know.
Shit, go walk your dog.
Yeah, go outside and go experience the human experience itself. What would you say to people that and also tell people to take mushrooms? So what would you suggest to folks that are getting into writing and are trying to get inspired and better their craft, and what would you say to the noobs?
Go out and do some fun things, you know, get inspired by doing some stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mr. P, I got a little special segment that I cooked up just for you because I know that you are a fellow cover art enjoyer. I know that you are very particular about your cover art. You like certain stuff. You like certain artists. You're a connoisseur when it comes to aesthetics of books. So I found some rather interesting book covers, past and present, that I'm going to bring up on the screen here, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to see if you think that they're cringe, or if they're based, or if this is just ridiculous, or if you love it or hate it, or what you think. So we're just going to bring up some interesting covers that I found, and we're going to get your reactions to them and see how you like them.
All right, let's do this.
Can you see that?
That's weird and kind of cringe. Don't know that I would pick
up. So I guess this is a Perry Rodin, and Perry Rodin, if folks aren't familiar, is a kind of like it's sort of like a pulp that was popular in Germany that did some really offbeat, weird sci-fi, and they're pretty notorious for having some really fantastical, wonderful cover art, and also some really downright bizarre cover art. So what is going on here with these long cats? I don't know. So this wouldn't make it for Cirsova.
No. I feel like this is going to turn into a live stream of Good Show, Sir.
What is that? Does anybody speak German in the chat? I can't. Die Trumenreiter. I don't know what that means. So whatever that means, probably means retarded cats in space. Okay, so next one up we got here, The Snow Queen by Joan D. Vinge.
That really looks like it's trying too hard. Like you can tell that like they were going through some naughty magazines and tracing.
I saw this. I was like, what is kind of
heavily referenced? What is I believe the art term for it.
like look at the faces on these people. They're not even like looks like they're not even in the same room. Or it's like this guy, he's just like frustrated. Like he's got this, they got me in this stupid helmet. They got me in this banana hammock with my bipper popping out. You know, this lady's got her booty meat popping. This lady in the back, I don't even know what the fuck she's doing. So this what do you say? Cringe?
Cringe.
Who okayed this? What is this outfit this guy's wearing? Okay, so we got a couple more here. About this one here.
You know, that was actually pretty funny, and you know, because like Clifford Simak does some really good fantasy stuff. I know he's mostly known for science fiction, but he's also a really good fantasy author. So like this is one of those covers that's like, it's really weird, but you know, it's like I'd kind of want to check it out.
Yeah, this for some reason this devil guy, he looks Greek. I think he's Greek. He looks like he owns a diner in New Jersey, right? He's his name's like Nico Papadopoulos or some shit, right? he's got the belly, he's got the chest hair, he probably wears too much cologne, he sexually harasses his waitresses. This is, I don't know, he looks Greek to me. This I don't,
like what even is that? Is that like Dune or something?
I think this is like, what, I don't even know what language that is. I guess this is like Hungarian Dune or something. I don't know.
That looks like Hebrew.
I don't know what I don't know. It's fucking, I don't know the difference between these wingding languages. You know, the ones that got like the weird font. Yeah, I guess this is their rendition of Dune. I don't know. That's
That looks awful.
That's
I mean, it might be appropriate for whatever Dune book it is, but you know, it looks awful.
Oh, I'm not gonna lie. When I first saw this, I was like crying, laughing. It's like 3D rendered, and there's like a blue eye up there. Like, I don't know who. Okay, you would think, yeah, if it's Hebrew, like this is probably for Israel. You know, Israel's, you know, they're people that are known to have a little bit of money. You think they could have hired an artist? Who knows? Nullis got triggered. My buddy Nullis, shout out to Nullis. He's a Hungarian guy. He said Hungarian uses the Latin alphabet. I'm sorry, bud. It was like just the first thing that came off my head. I know that that's not Hungarian. This one here.
Bad cover for probably a bad book by a bad author.
It looks like he's like getting it in here. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I wonder if that one's referenced too.
He's standing like that ship is his schwanz. You know what I mean? It's like he's got his cannoli popping out. Who okayed this?
Cringe.
Cringe. What do you know about Asimov? And I know you have begged him quite a few times.
Asimov is a talented nonfiction writer who's able to convey scientific ideas in an engaging way, but he can't write fiction for shit.
And his son is a pederast, right?
Yeah, that's what I hear.
Yeah. Apparently, there's actually a pretty big scandal around Asimov and his son. So folks should go look it up. Really not good people. And his book covers have like robots flexing their meat. So
you know, knowing Philip Jose Farmer, that cover is probably accurate to the story.
Wait, you know Philip Jose Farmer?
Yeah, I read Maker of the Universes, and I'm like, this is pretty good. But, you know, I never actually felt a lot of drive to pick up or read anything else from him. You know, he just kind of... It was an interesting enough tribute to classic pulp fiction, but it was not something that blew me away so much that I'm like, I need to read everything that this guy's written.
Yeah. So okay, so he's not like your friend or something like that.
No, no.
Okay, so I can dunk on this guy. Okay, so this cover like confused me when I first saw it. You got like a sphinx. He's got his boobies out. There's a snake biting a baby as it's hatching from its egg, and on the sphinx there's a snail who's just like going like wilding out. Like I don't even know like what's going on here. This person was
The
on drugs
autistic
when they.
screeching. Whee!
Yeah. And also, what kind of name is Philip Jose Farmer? It's like it reminds me of like the Amerimut meme where it's like dystopian like mix like mystery meat people that don't know what they are like in the near future, you know what I mean? Like people that are named like Luigi Takayama McZiggler, right?
You know, I feel like I looked it up once, and he wasn't actually Hispanic, but you know, I don't remember. It's been a while.
But that's if this is like a pseudonym, that's a pretty strange pseudonym. You know, it's just like I don't know. I just picture in my mind like 4,000 like a McDonald's complex with like some what was that movie that had where they went into the future and everybody's retarded.
God, that's like all of them.
Yeah, but this is
Idiocracy.
like idiocracy. It's like a McDonald's complex, and everybody's like in there watching TV, watching All My Balls, and everybody's named things like you got like Juan Francois Zulu Changberg and like Deshaun Sitting Hawk Nintendo. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just like I don't know. Philip Jose Farmer is just a weird name, weird cover. I don't know. These people are on drugs. Here's a good one.
The palette is weird. It looks like it was done in a lot of different layers. Like it's eye catching, but I wouldn't say it's a good cover.
Yeah, clearly Pibbs did this, right? Like it's like you got the girl boss.
Well, I mean, it does have a pull quote from The Guardian on there, so
yeah. So what do you say, based or cringe?
It needs a lot of work. For me, the thing that bothers me is the contrast to colors on the right and left. You know, like it messes with my eyes.
Yeah. One thing that drives me nuts about these people, especially with how they play tabletop games, is they have like look at this. Like she's probably like in love with this lizard man. Dog, a lizard man looks at you like food. There is no like friendship to be had with a literal reptile, a bipedal reptile. That creature doesn't understand morality. It doesn't have a frontal lobe. It's probably like 20 IQ. It wants to eat you and your kids when you guys go to sleep. So how are you going to like fall in love with? It's got scales. Like, what are you going to do? What are you going to? You know, I don't know. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
And before Lusty Argonian made in the chat.
Yeah. Here's a good.
Oh, Amy Sumida. Is she? I think I actually know who that lady is. I want to say that she wrote this series of books called like God Slayer, God Killer, God Hunter, where like I read like the first half of it because it was like part of some free ebook giveaway thing that Drive Through RPG was doing, and like it starts out with like this promising concept of like the whole thing is just like her getting railed by Thor and Quetzalcoatl.
This is just God.
So yeah, this is a lot of cringe, but I actually know who this lady is, and yeah, her stuff is pretty cringe.
Oh my God,
all of it's cringe.
Not only does she have like two fanooks, they got to be interracial, and on top of it, it's just bad. Like this is like
one guy's photoshopped in over a CGI poser person.
Oh God! This
yeah, that's a bad cover.
Yeah, I would.
That's the sort of cover that like you get for like $50 from a site.
Nola says Buck Broken Fabio.
Oh Lord.
All right. Oh yeah. Spoiler alert. There might not be any based. I think I just picked all terrible ones. So here we go.
I would say that image is not terrible, but it's not a good or interesting cover.
Yeah. Who wants to see a like woman orc? You know what I mean?
Oh, pull quote from Sean McGuire. Oh
Who's
no.
that? Who's that?
Oh, she's some obnoxious lady in science fiction.
Is she like in them like Sifwa weirdos that
Yeah, she's one
John
of those
Delarose
Sifwa
fights with?
weirdos.
Yeah, they're a bunch of fanoiks. Like I would never like I don't know. I wouldn't even be able to like be in the same room as these people. You know what I mean? It's
So I only do comic cons and not sci-fi cons.
is that the okay? So if I started going to cons, which ones do I need to like stay away from?
The ones that are not comic or anime conventions. Like any ones that bill themselves as like a science fiction convention or a fantasy convention or a steampunk convention, stay away from those.
Yeah. All right.
Ouch. Was not prepared for that. That looks like something you could like rip the cover off and like cut the eyes off and wear it as a little mask.
My first, I was like, "What does this have to do with the At the Mountains of Madness?" You know, like,
well, it might be Brown Jenkins. I think it's supposed to be Brown Jenkins from Dreams in the Witch House.
Oh,
The weird rat thing with the man's face that was the witch's familiar.
okay.
Yeah, so that actually is from one of the stories that might be in that collection.
I just thought, yeah, I looked at this, and you know what? Unironically, this is like the best one of the lot so far. I'll be honest.
Well, I mean, as someone who's familiar with the stories, I'm immediately able to recognize what it's supposed to be, which is, you know, that's something at least.
Yeah. So a little bit further on the base spectrum.
Or it's still cringe.
Still cringe.
Still not a good cover.
It's still cringe. All right, I think it gets worse from here. So, this one. Speaking of John Delarose, this one's for him.
The art is not the worst part about that cover.
Latinx Rising. Shout out to
everything about that cover is terrible, but you know.
Yeah, and, I don't know. It's just what are they rising from? What are they rising for? You know, like were they ever like not? I don't know. I just thought this was like bizarre.
You know, they don't need to be rising. You had Alfred Koppel Jr. and Albert DePina having cover stories like back in the 30s and 40s. You know, you don't. Latinos have always been in science fiction.
And
there's no rising that needs to be done. Hell, Cirsova is a Latin-run publication. We've had multiple Latino and Latina artists that we have worked with, as well as authors that we have published. There does not need to be this rising by this David Goodwin character here.
David Goodwin, yeah, David Goodwin, Matthew David Goodwin, leader of the Latinx. Look at it.
That hurts my eyes. I mean, it's eye-catching, but not in a good way.
So you think is this Queen of Cringe?
It's pretty cringe. I mean, it meets a lot of the modern layout standards, which is not necessarily a good thing, but like it's awful looking. It's ugly. It's ugly.
And it's got one of the Idiocracy names, Joy Sanchez Taylor. You know what I mean? She's one of the dystopian future ladies. If I'm sorry for misgendering you, Miss or Mr. Joy. How do those people get called? How do they get addressed?
I don't know.
I want to know how many people bought this. I wonder. Who knows? Mr. P, I'm sorry for subjecting you to this horrible this collection of I probably should have put a couple based ones in there. You know what I mean? Instead of just subjecting everybody to all this cancer. But it was too funny. It was just too funny. I just got so much pleasure in thinking of how many people are going to be looking at these and like shifting in their seats as they progressively burn out everybody's retinas with the pure saturated cancer. Buddy. Okay, I'm sorry. But so we're going over an hour here. Mr. P. Alexander, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just many blessings and prayers go to you and your organization, your publication, and we know that it's going to grow and grow and grow as the years go on, and just awesome stuff. And I look forward to reading the awesome stuff that you guys get put out there. Is there anything you would like to shill before we shut down?
Yeah, I'd just like to say the Kickstarter for Mongoose and Meerkat Volume 2 got a couple days left on it. The better that does, the more money we have to buy stories for next year. So be sure to check that out. Also, our summer issue just came out a couple of weeks ago. Just go to Amazon, type in Cirsova. You'll find pretty much everything we've done. This latest issue is really cool. It's got the first part of a novel by Dave Ritzlin that we're serializing, and you won't want to miss it.
Very, very cool. So yeah, go follow him on Twitter at Cirsova. Go check him out, cirsova.wordpress.com. You can find them on Amazon and other retailers. If you want to check out what I'm doing, make sure you go to thebizarchives.com. Bizarchives issue 3 is coming out very, very soon. It's in layout right now. It's about to come out. We have issue 1 of Chronicles of Heraldry is about to drop. We have another cosmic horror novella coming out called The Molybdus Articulate. So if you like the crawling horror of the Lovecraftian tradition, you're gonna love it. Man, we got so much cool stuff lined up. We got some reprints lined up. So everybody stay tuned. Follow us on Twitter and Telegram at The Bizarchives. Check us out at thebizarchives.com and our Substack, The Obelisk. Go to thebizarchives.substack.com. Sign up. It's only $5. You get podcasts. You get Paranormal Transmissions, which is a people send in like real life accounts of paranormal experiences. Awesome stuff. So everybody stay tuned, and I'll see you guys next time here on the Dave Martell YouTube channel. Hails and blessings to each and every one of you. I'll see you guys next time.
Good night.